That was about 20 years ago they figured this out, and I haven't been back there since high school. And when we pulled in, I was like, holy crap, this place has so much money now.
It's weird how the introduction of booze has made the place less trashy.
Welcome back to Cartridge Based Radio. I'm Donald, and once again joined by Brad.
Hello!
We're back, and we're scared, Brad.
How scared are we?
We are full of that fear effect.
Oh, man. So full of it.
You want to tell us about Fear Effect?
Fear Effect is a PlayStation 1 game. It was released in 2000. It's kind of survival horror, I guess, is probably how you would put it in the genre. It has the same control type as Resident Evil. It was... I'm blanking on this. I think it was an Eidos published game.
It was. I believe the developer was Kronos Interactive.
And it is cel-shaded, which was it was a very uncommon thing at that time.
I read that this was the first PlayStation game to actually use that system. And to be clear, it's not fully cel-shaded, like the backgrounds are pre-rendered, but the characters all a very cool cel-shaded look.
And it looks really good. A big problem with PlayStation games, and especially as they got later and later in the PlayStation's life cycle, is that the textures that they were using, it was almost like they were trying to do too much. You look at like Final Fantasy VIII, games from around that era, really kind of grainy, too busy, and this had a real nice, clean look to it.
They went a step further. The characters actually had like animated faces when they talked. Their jaws weren't animated. It was the face texture would go through an animation cycle when they talk. You can tell it's like 4 or 5 frames, but it really gives personality to the moments that you're in that game. And this game is crazy in the cinematics department. They were going for something just heads and shoulders above Resident Evil. You're right, it is the tank controls from Resident Evil down to like the camera flips to show you the pre-rendered background you're running across in the exact same way. These guys, 4 years? Yeah, 4 years after Resident Evil, they studied Resident Evil hard. It's got some nice features that Resident Evil didn't have, like your characters will aim for you, which is nice. It also, if you creep and get up behind someone, you can do a one-hit kill with like a knife or a baton. So you can stealth your way through some of the parts.
Well, no, let's be a little more specific. You can stealth your way through some of the parts. I can get my ass killed through most of this game.
I played it on the easiest difficulty, which I think the two are normal and hard. When I first got in there, it was just brutal. The first few guys I met, I didn't know what was going on. I found the button that made her turn around, and then I'd just get shot in the back of the head. Once I figured out the systems and reacquainted myself with the tank controls, there's problems with the boss fights in that game and the tank controls because they ask you to do way too much with those tank controls. But Fear Effect is a special little game, Brad.
We've used the term a lot so far on the show, and just for some of our listeners who maybe aren't avid Resident Evil fans, or maybe are a little younger and have grown up kind of spoiled in the era of intuitive controls, could you describe tank controls for us a little bit?
All right, so tank controls means when you push up, your character walks whichever way they're facing. That isn't directly tied to the way the camera has flipped. So you could be with the camera behind your character and you push upward or up to walk into the scene, but that may not be the way the character thinks it needs to walk according to the way it's facing, and it will just turn around and walk right back towards you. You have to slowly rotate and aim your character and then walk and then rotate. It's not good is what it is. It's not good.
Yeah, I mean, dual stick control existed by this point in the PlayStation's life, but because that wasn't the original controller, there's kind of an emphasis to be able to do everything with just the D-pad. You forget like how used to it you've become over the last 2-3 generations of like one stick moves your guy and the other stick moves the camera around to line it all up. This doesn't have that. All the camera angles are kind of preset, and then how you're moving is generally dependent on the camera angle, or it's dependent on how you're facing already.
It's a mess is what it is. So Fear Effect is straight up bonkers. It starts out and it looks like you are in Hong Kong Blade Runner.
Yeah.
So it's got these cool like air helicopters and these two mercenaries going in because your crew is going to kidnap the Yakuza boss's daughter and hold her for ransom and get a big payday.
It's almost like all those games that we've been making fun of for the last few weeks where like the bad guys kidnap somebody and it turns out to be like the last person in the world that they should have kidnapped. Now you're those guys.
Yes, things pretty quickly go sideways. Your informant gets shot, and the bad guy basically takes you hostage, which you easily get out of because Hannah, who's the main character, is very capable of breaking faces. And through a series of very obscure puzzles, you end up getting the information you needed. Then you get captured again. And then the game did something I was not expecting. It flipped to the other mercenary, Glass. And then you had to run through the level that Hannah had already affected and try to get to her, which is, I believe when we talked about Resident Evil 3, we discussed Resident Evil 2 briefly, how we thought it was kind of stupid when you switched the other character. You just sort of did a character swap. The other characters had no effect in the game.
Yeah.
And I thought it was super cool that they had this duality storytelling going.
Yeah, where the actions of the first character, the impact of that you can see when you come through the second time.
You eventually get out of that situation and you meet the girl's father, and I think her name was Ming Li, but then you go meet an Australian man. I can't recall a single PlayStation game that swore as much as Fear Effect does. Like, I was like, this is PlayStation, it's the tail end of the PlayStation era, but they are just dropping profanities left and right. It's quite a special thing. You meet an Australian. Apparently he's on your crew too, and you find out that the girl is headed to a restaurant, some Providence in China. So you hop on a boat to go find her, and you come across a fishing village. This is where the game takes its first weird turn, and the fishing village is full of zombies.
Like any good fishing village.
You do a series of things. You find out that the girl that you're after came into the village, and soon after everyone started turning into zombies. And she's hanging around being typical creepy little girl who's like, you can't stop me. She's pretty much right. Then you meet this old lady, and this whole time, I guess we should go back. For some reason, Hana on this boat decides she's going to take a shower, and the camera gets a little pervy at that moment. And then she throws on a towel, and you play most of the fishing village in a towel.
I mean, think about, like, if you've ever, like, worn a towel, like you got out of the shower and you go to change and you don't have a robe or whatever, changing clothes handy. You walk around with a towel, like, it is effort just to keep the towel where you want it to be. Like, that's one hand.
Yeah, she's, like, rolling around, shooting, like, no problem.
This is a fantastic towel. This is like a ShamWow.
Billy Mays could sell this thing. Then you meet this old lady who's like, there's a train because apparently the military comes and steals their grain to resupply themselves. That's where you first meet the military, and literally the first thing you do is they start shooting at you and you start murdering just members of the military. I was like, what kind of mercenary group is this?
The best mercenary group.
There comes a part where she gets captured. The answer to that puzzle is you use the towel, which is in your inventory, and she just, like, opens her towel, and he's like, wow, and then one of your guys kills him. It's like, Fear Effect, what are you doing?
You could, like, double use the towel. Like, first you open it up, and he's like, whoa, and then you just, like, whip him with the towel in the face, and...
But then you go to this restaurant, which you find out is actually a brothel. And this is where Fear Effect takes its big turn. You find out Hana used to work there as one of the girls, but she got out of the life to become an insanely murderous mercenary. But then you find out that Ming Li is actually, I think that's her name. I want to get that right. Li Ming. She is from hell. And then you find out the person who runs the brothel is actually a demon in disguise and murders one of the main characters.
Whoops.
Right after that, Glass gets his arm chopped off and put on a meat hook and dies. And then the little girl's like, you have to come to hell with me. And Hana's like, cool.
Yeah, whatever.
You jump through this hole, and this place was extremely unsettling to be in. Like, in a way, Resident Evil never made me nervous, because all your ammo you pick up is little paper dolls, which this is some sort of Chinese tradition that you make paper dolls and burn them and send them to the afterlife for the people you care for. So anything you pick up is paper, and then you have to find a bonfire or a fire and burn the thing to get the item you want, which added this whole new level of when you think you're low on ammo and your inventory is just full of paper ammo and you have to get past bad guys to burn it, turn it into ammo to then kill them so they drop more paper ammo. Then Glass comes back to life and he jumps into hell. Then he has to fight the guy who got his head chopped open, your other partner, and then you find out your informant at the beginning was the King of Hell.
The King of Hell.
And then you have to fight him. There's several endings going on here. The quote-unquote best ending, she gets burned up.
Who, she being the...
Ling Mi gets, burned up, and you ruin Hell's plan. Apparently Hell is full. The plan is to turn everyone on Earth into demons, so Earth is ruled by demons, and then they don't have to worry about more demons coming to Hell.
I love that, in this, and sometimes in, zombie lore, there's just this... Hell has these logistical problems where they just run out of space. Hell has a finite amount of space. They're leasing, a skyscraper, and it fills up, and they're like, well, now we gotta invade Earth. That may or may not have been part of the storyline to Doom, but it's just, not much money, I guess, in being Hell, so you can't, rent a bigger warehouse, and you have to just conquer Earth constantly.
One of the most interesting facts about Hell in Fear Effect is your cell phone works there.
My cell phone doesn't even work in my house.
Well, maybe you should go to Hell and your cell phone will work. But that's how you save in the game, so you're constantly, your phone is ringing and you're like, hello? And then you save your game.
I mean, it makes sense. I have Verizon, so it's probably closer to their headquarters. I'm just impressed that this year 2000 cell phone gets reception in Hell.
Yeah, it's a special cell phone. It's like a Nokia too, so that explains a lot.
It's a BlackBerry. She's probably paying by the minute for those calls and is on a 90-minute plan. Texts aren't a thing yet.
It'd be great if you ran out of minutes while you're in hell. Oh, hell. There's a great line in this game. Some of the Yakuza ram you off a pier, and as the car is flying through the air, Hannah yells, "We're gonna splash!" I immediately had to write that down because I was like, she said we're gonna splash.
Your concerns, your priorities might not be on the right thing, Hannah.
I played through this whole game trying to figure out what on earth the title had to do with everything I just said. There's no mechanic in there like Eternal Darkness, where if you let your character's sanity slip to a certain point, the game starts messing with you.
Yeah, you start getting hallucinations and fake game over screens, and
I could not figure out why they called this game Fear Effect.
Was it a Japanese game first? Could it be a translation issue? Probably not if it was Eidos.
I mean, at the beginning, the creepy girl talks about how she's always wanted to feel pain, and then when she felt it, it was so wonderful. But I have no idea why this game's called Fear Effect.
Well, they did study Resident Evil pretty closely. Maybe they're also like, we need a nonsensical title that's like 2 words that are common but don't really make any sense when you put them together.
It could be. I was expecting just this psychological terror game. It's heads above Resident Evil in the storytelling. People praise Metal Gear Solid for its storytelling.
Some people do.
That game, it's like, of course the storytelling is very cinematic because we took the control away from you for 45 minutes. Fear Effect, when they have a cutscene, it's like maybe a minute's tops and you're back into the action, and it just drops these cutscenes in as you're playing, and it takes you right back into the game with no load screen. So it's a very snappy way to tell the story. And the story is good. I'm sorry if anyone was going to be like, oh, I wanted to play this, and then I told you the whole thing.
Yeah, we probably should have put up a spoiler alert for a 17-year-old game up here.
If you're this deep into the show and you're shocked by what we did there with the story, I'm so sorry.
Well, I think that might have been the most detailed recap we've ever given of a game.
Here, I'll show you.
Wow.
Actually filled an entire piece of paper as I played this game with my notes because it just kept twisting and turning. I have a couple questions the game did not answer.
Like, why are there 2 different buttons to access your inventory? That was what threw me when I first started playing the game. Like, okay, so this one walks, and this one ducks, and this one goes into my inventory, and this one also goes into my inventory.
I don't know why they chose to do this, but it's the square and the circle button rotate your inventory left and right.
You know, like Resident Evil is just like, we'll put it on the start button, you'll open up a different menu, it's fine. And that, they kind of cut into the action a little bit, but it also saved you some buttons that you could use for other things, like running and getting bit by zombies, I think was one of the buttons. I don't think I ever had so many items that it was like, oh, it's impossible to go through all these. But it was a little weird to have 2 face buttons that both went through your inventory.
I think the goal was to keep you in the action and not give you that out to pause it and pick your weapon and heal yourself. Because there is no healing mechanic. The best I could tell is every once in a while the game would just refill your health for you. I have no idea when it would happen, but my health bar would go from very, very red all the way to green.
It was almost like a precursor to, I mean, it wasn't timing based. It wasn't like you just sit there for a little bit and refills, but it is, you know, maybe like a very early version of what you see now with a lot of games where you're, if you take a lot of damage and then you stop taking damage, you start to get your health back over time. It wasn't exactly like that in Fear Effect, but it's sort of similar.
I guess it had to be when you cross some invisible barriers or lines, they would do it for you.
Yeah, like some kind of checkpoint that they're not telling you about.
Because there's no checkpoints in this game. It's all saves you've done.
That took a lot of getting used to for me. It took me a long time just to get through the opening sequence because, you know, I get kind of not super far. I get past a couple of guys and then I get killed and it would be like, man, I have to start over from the beginning again. Like, how far do I have to get before I get a checkpoint? And eventually it dawned on me I just had to save because this is a really old game.
And sometimes those phone checkpoint or save points are really far away, and sometimes there's just a bunch in a tight, close area. Like the brothel is having you save all over the place. This brings me to one of my problems with the story is when you find out the Yakuza boss is actually in on this, and he knows about it, you still decide to go with Li Ming to hell to protect her. They don't really explain why Hannah decides that this is a good idea. She's like, yeah, I'll go with you to hell. Most people, like you or I, if someone creepy was like, hey, would you come to hell with me to fight the king of hell? You're like, oh, man, I was going to go get Taco Bell and then watch The Wire. So you go do you. I'm good.
It's kind of like, well, I was actually coming to kidnap, remember? So get in the back of the unmarked van. Instead of hell, we're going to New Jersey.
The puzzles in this game, they studied Resident Evil very, very hard, and they make as much sense in Fear Effect as they do in Resident Evil. Like, there's one where you have to get vases with flowers, and it's all just by what you see in the environment, which I wasn't seeing because apparently I've gotten so used to games holding my hand and dragging me along that I had to use a lot of online resources to get through this game because I had no idea what it was asking me to do. And some of these puzzles are straight up, you got to know Chinese characters. Like letter characters to solve this. I was like, hey, I made it this far in my life without learning Chinese characters. We are not starting now, people.
You know, it reminds me, in the first Resident Evil, the STARS team would have gotten nowhere except that a couple of them knew how to play the piano. You know, like there's a puzzle where you have to play the Moonlight Sonata, and if you're Jill, I think you just like know how to play the piano, and if you're Chris, you have to get Claire? I don't know, the one that you find there, the medic, she knows how to play the piano. If neither of them did that, like, that would be it. You'd never open up the little secret area and get the item that you need, and it was actually a pretty effective defense. I'm sure whoever designed that mansion was like, what are the odds that any of them know how to play Moonlight Sonata?
Once again, Umbrella one step ahead of STARS.
Or so they thought.
Oh, I'm classically trained in piano and guns.
You know, like 8-year-old Jill Valentine's taking her piano lessons, and she's just like, when am I ever going to need to use this? This is boring. I want to play softball. You know, thank goodness she didn't.
After the towel flashing scene in Fear Effect, the guy who got shot in the back of the head, she like looks at his boots and his pants.
We gotta stop for just a second because this is farther than I got in the game. I was not good at Fear Effect and I did not get this far. So you flash this guy and then you shoot him in the back of the head. So is he just like, oh, that's horrible, and he turns away and then you shoot him in the back of the head?
No, one of your partners comes up behind him and smokes him.
Okay.
So she looks at his pants and his boots and goes, huh. And this dude was like 6'2". And in the next scene, she's wearing like form-fitting pants, boots that are her size. And she is not a big person. His like military issue shirt has turned into a female-sized tank top.
Did she just like tie it off like at the belly button? Because that makes any size shirt automatically like whatever size you are. It's magic.
I mean, I guess it was sort of tucked in, so it probably went down to her like knees.
You know, like the PlayStation isn't capable of rendering this, but you know, the actuality was that she was just like, she looked like a little kid wearing one of her parents' clothes. Like she's just like this tiny thing draped in this giant man's clothes. The sleeves are like draping over the end of her hand.
And right after that, they give you a train, and you're literally on the train for like 2 minutes before one of your teammates who you left behind, Hannah's like, oh, we forgot Glass, and Deke's like, hey, don't worry about it. He's a grown-up. And she's like, true, and drives away from the fishing village without like looking for him. But then he runs up next to the open door. He's running at train speeds, and he's like, hey, the bridge is out. Hannah's like, uh-oh, and jumps out of the train. And then the other guy was up top fighting military people who were standing on top of the train for some reason. And he runs and jumps and gets off, and the train lands in the river. But they make this huge deal of getting this train operational, and then your characters are on it for literally a cutscene, and then it's ruined. And then the girl's like, hey, you have to come with me to this restaurant. And they're like, okay, that seems like a good idea. But you're a prisoner, just so that's clear.
They're in the village and they're like, you see that river over there? We have to get all the way over there. And everybody's like, oh man, that's like half a mile away. We're going to have to fix a train. I'm not walking it.
I mean, it's the same river that you came on to get to the fishing village. The zombies did light your boats on fire for some reason. I mean, that wasn't a great move. So I guess you have to use the train that lands in the river. And then it's just like this fade wipe and you're suddenly out in front of the restaurant. And she's like, I'm going to go in with one of you guys. And the other two like, well, we should stay out here.
So this restaurant is in the zombie fishing village?
No, this is in like a major city.
Oh, okay.
I do not know what the zombie fishing village had to do with anything. You go from like Neo Hong Kong with flying jet helicopters to riding on a crappy boat. And then you are at a fishing village, and then suddenly you're back in the urban sprawl.
You know, sometimes when I was, like late teens, early 20s, and sometimes I think, man, I should make games. And like you get like these images of like stuff that you think would be cool in a game. You know, maybe you see something similar in a movie, you just imagine it or whatever. And you can think of like just like these scenes that you're like, oh man, I wish that I could make a game so that I could put this in it. And it seems like they just are like, every idea that they had ended up in this game. They're like, what if there's a zombie fishing village? What if we're in a futuristic city?
Yeah, and all the future tech stuff sort of just goes away after that opening scene, which is real bizarre. And when Li Ming gets blood on her, that's what activates her. And her eyes turn black, and then people see, it's like a mirror. They see what their actual soul looks like, and it causes their flesh to like pop off, and they see the demon that's actually inside appears. So that happens at the brothel. But the weirdest part of that scene is Hannah walks into a room, and there's like a changing screen, and you put on the prostitute's clothes, and then you can walk freely, and none of the enemies even pay you attention.
So this is a brothel that is fronting as a restaurant, right? Can you imagine the Yelp reviews this restaurant must have? It's like, I went to get some noodles, and then it turned out it was a brothel, and then my flesh melted off, and the demon inside me got loose, and now I'm writing negative reviews on the internet.
Yeah, you'd have to write that on your old cell phone where you had to push the button 3 times to get a letter. You'd give up by then. Like, screw this.
This restaurant has so many negative reviews. The food was terrible, and I turned into a demon.
And I don't understand how it's built on top of hell. You jump through the hole in the floor in the cold meat freezer, and you're in hell. You'd think underneath a restaurant in downtown Hong Kong, there would be like a sewer.
Maybe an underground parking ramp. I imagine parking is probably kind of scarce in a city that size.
It's not hell. Getting a spot might be hell, but it's not like the hell. The visuals in hell in this game are actually very well thought out. The backgrounds in this game, all of them look very good. I mean, you still have the whole I'm a polygon person running on top of these pre-rendered things. That whole system has not held up well.
At least it looks a little different. Like if you play a Square RPG from the PlayStation era, they're all identical. It's all just like low poly person running around this grainy pre-rendered background. Every single one of them follows the same formula. This one, at least, between the cell shading, and I think the backgrounds, instead of being a still picture, I think I read that they were using FMV, which is why the game is on like 700 discs.
Yeah, all the backgrounds are actually looping video, so you get cool lighting effects throughout them, and the characters do pop off the background, but it's a very cool blend. It is a very pretty game, even now. I mean, it could be higher resolution. The backgrounds, you can't do much for them, but the characters still look really good because, like you said, it doesn't fall into that pit of, oh, we decided they needed urban camo, but we only have a 13 by 13 texture sheet, so it looks like crap. There's multiple endings in this game. You actually get to choose near the end if you want Hannah to shoot Glass in the face, or if you want Glass to shoot Hannah in the face. I didn't play it on hard, so I had to watch this on YouTube, but if you play on hard, you can get them both to lower their guns and work together. And then Li Ming sacrifices herself as you fight the Yakuza boss, who's turned into a demon that's actually a hand. and you have to burn money and fire to hurt him.
Is this the stupidest final boss that you've ever encountered in a game? Just in terms of, like, concept, I guess? Like, maybe you've played other games where, like, the final boss was, like, easier or, you know, kind of more annoying, but, like, is this the dumbest idea for a boss?
No, I can tell you the dumbest boss I've ever fought in a video game. Mass Effect 2.
Oh, the final boss?
Yeah.
The heavy metal album cover guy? Like the robot, half a robot skeleton?
Half the robot, human embryo, giant robot, baby man, Terminator thing.
It looked like it should be on the cover of an Iron Maiden album. But yeah, it was... I think the stupidest one I can think of was one of the Onimusha games. I think it was 2. The final boss is a golden Buddha statue. And that's actually, like, the antagonist up to that point is like, now that I've created my golden Buddha statue. And then you fight, like, a statue. And I think it might even be inanimate. Like, you're just vandalizing a statue at that point.
Onimusha's just drunk. He goes into a temple and starts hitting a statue. Like, what are you doing?
I'm fighting the final boss.
I'm fighting this evil Skuld. No, there's multiple final bosses in this game. Because if you're Hannah, you have to fight the guy with the money. Then if you're Glass, you get to see Li Ming's true form. Because he wakes up in the meat locker and apparently he's fine. He just has one arm. And his first instinct is to jump into the hole to hell, not seek medical attention. And he does a lot of climbing, which made no sense to me, because climbing up a bunch of vines with one arm is so hard.
I've never tried it, but yeah, I would imagine so.
I think doing most things with a bloody stump that has not had any sort of like time to heal or mass amounts of Vicodin in you is very hard. If you choose his ending, Li Ming turns into the demon that he always knew she was. And then there's just many endings from that point. I think everyone has 3 endings. One of the bad endings I actually thought was way better than the good endings. Oh, the floating Yodas.
Okay, tell me about the floating Yodas.
So there's some demons in hell that they have like a Yoda head and a Yoda colored robe, and they float around and come after you. So for a good like 3 hours, you're just shooting floating Yodas in the head.
It's a really weird thing with video games where their depictions of hell involve creatures that look like good guy Star Wars characters. Because Doom had the imps that just look like Chewbacca's without the bandolier. And now we have like floating Yodas. I don't know if there's just like a lot of like pent up anger towards Star Wars for some reason among game designers, but it seems like they like sending those characters to hell.
And why is it assumed that anything from hell can be killed with bullets? Because most games where you fight hell, you're doing it with guns. You'd think if after you've died and gone to hell, you've achieved some level of that's not going to hurt you much anymore.
You know, I'm no hellologist, but yeah, it seems like once you're dead and in hell, like you're being tortured constantly. Like, what's a couple of gunshot wounds to you?
I mean, it shouldn't be. You should be like, are you serious? I'm going to die and drop a paper machine gun clip. Haha, now you have to go burn it. I actually thought that was really cool. Like, that's a really great way to flip mechanics, to make you work harder to get your bullets. Even though a couple times I considered throwing my control at my television because I ran out of bullets, just to realize, oh, I'm flush with paper clips. I don't know, it's so well put together and they did a good job of telling their story. It's kind of hard to poke a lot of holes in what they built here, my only complaint is how easily Hannah decides, I'm going to go to hell to help this person I was going to kidnap and ransom for money, just because she's mad that the brothel madam was actually a demon and the Yakuza guy cut off her friend's arm, which I don't think they're much of friends because she just looks at him hanging on that meat hook's like, oh, that sucks. She wasn't broken up in any way that this was happening.
She wasn't going to get him off the meat hook. I mean, he's a big guy and she's kind of a petite thing, and he's on a meat hook. It's just like, eh.
He gets himself off the meat hook with one arm. We've already talked about how when you have one arm, you have trouble climbing, but he just reaches up and grabs that chain and just pulls himself off it. And it was like through his shoulder, and he's like, oh, whatever, that arm is dead to me anyway. I'm going to hell. That is not a common decision. Like, just if you see a hole to hell, you're not like, hey, I should jump into that hole to hell. You're like, I should go get Mexican. That sounds really good right now. Or, a hospital.
The game is kind of bonkers, but it leans into it so much that it does get kind of hard to make fun of. It's just like, hey, I'm like a demon girl and I can't feel pain or die, but I really want to do both someday. And now like these 3 mercenaries are just going to jump in a pit to hell and come get me.
The moment where you see the first guy get killed, Deke, I was like, holy crap, they didn't just do this in a PlayStation 1 game, because I didn't think they even thought that way for games back then. And then moments later, Glass gets his arm chopped off, and you're like, what are they doing? They're killing the main cast. Then he's not dead, and then he sort of dies again, and then he's not dead again. It's very confusing.
It's Final Fantasy IV. It would be great if you got like new party members, like right after they got killed or maimed.
Hi, we are mercenaries too.
It's just like, yeah, we couldn't fit more than 3 characters in your party at a time, so we just kill them off and then bring them back when we need to make room. Here's 2 new characters. Here's a bard. That would be great. You finally get to the part where you're going to hell and your 2 awesome mercenary buddies get killed and you just get like a bard and like a healer.
I'm going to say like Kenny G and Dr. Oz would fill those roles really well. Kenny, we're sneaking through hell. Stop playing sweet, smooth jazz. Dr. Oz is just talking about asking you about your poop. It's like, how's your poop, Hannah? Not now, Oz. Jeez, it's fine, okay? Like, if you were Kenny G, how would you fight the King of Hell?
You're asking me to imagine, like, 2 things that I've never really had to worry about before. This is a lot to put together.
You have to worry about these things right now in this moment.
I've become Kenny G and I'm fighting the King of Hell. Like, a lot in my life has changed very suddenly.
And the King of Hell's like, you can't defeat me, Kenny G. What's his move?
Play a song, I guess. I don't know a lot about Kenny G. Maybe he like does like MMA on the side for fun.
Kenny G's like 90 pounds wet.
He's probably like in his 50s by now, too.
He's mostly glorious flowing ringlets of hair and a saxophone. I guess the King of Hell probably wouldn't see it coming. He starts playing some smooth jazz and it just hits him in the side of the head with the saxophone.
It's just like he starts playing and the King of Hell's like, hey, this sounds like the kind of music that they would play in a generic office building, which is what I'm trying to get to fit all these stuff that I ran out of room for in hell. Am I in my dream office building? And then just whack over the head with a saxophone or clarinet or whatever he uses.
It's like, is this an elevator? Am I in an elevator?
This show is all over the place this week.
It's so good. So you successfully stop hell, which not many people can say, like, I stopped hell. Actually, we can poke fun at something. Hell's plan is to send Li Ming to Earth, get blood on her, and start turning people into demons. Because they're over full. So their plan is, we're just going to turn everyone on Earth into a demon. That will solve our occupancy problem.
This is a bad plan. I'm already seeing a problem with this plan.
If you're going to say that hell has a king, which would be Satan, there's no intervention from the other side like, whoa, guys, back up. You're not turning everyone into a demon. It's like, come on, God. He's like, no, I'm drawing a line.
You think about this, like, you're the king of hell, and, like, hell's too crowded, and, like, you want to do something nice for your subjects and get them more space? Like, aren't you supposed to be torturing them? Shouldn't you be trying to make it even more and more crowded?
Yeah, their plan is we're going to turn everyone on Earth into a demon. Does that mean they won't kill each other and won't fill hell up more? Is everyone just going to be a demon and suddenly cool with each other and just hang out? And if you're an Earthrealm demon, are you being tortured as you would be in hell? Or are you just every day, like, going to work, paying taxes, taking your garbage to the curb?
If you get turned into a demon, does that, like, kind of, like, put you on, like, Team Hell, and then you don't have to worry about being tortured for all eternity because you're on the devil's side? Like, is this like a get out of eternal punishment kind of thing? It's like, oh, I'm a demon. I guess I don't have to, like, get stabbed with hooks and lit on fire for all eternity. Like my friend who stole a loaf of bread and didn't get turned into a demon. Well,
all he says is hell is full, so we came up with this plan.
Maybe Satan, like, just collects, like, some really, like, tacky lawn ornaments or something. He's like, yeah, hell's full of, like, all these inflatable snowmen that I bought one Christmas.
Target was having a killer clearance on these.
They play Jingle Bells on a loop.
I love that song.
For all eternity.
But Hannah wasn't ever like, this is a really stupid plan. What are you thinking? Are you then going to govern everyone on the Earth realm? Are you going to empty hell onto the Earth? Wouldn't it make more sense, instead of having this girl turn everyone into a demon, maybe sending some of them to the Earth realm to hang out? Because it doesn't seem like they have that much trouble in this game getting to the Earth realm. They just sort of show up in it. It's a bad plan. I don't like it.
This is a very in-depth analysis from our expert gamer, Donald.
It's just so bad. There's no way to fix it, because what they're saying is we had a finite amount of space in the eternal fourth dimensional realm of hell. We ran out of space.
Now, this girl, does she have to get, like, somebody else's blood on her? Can she just, like, you know, like, take a pin and just stab herself in the finger? And then I'm like, oh, full-born hell mode?
The first time it happened, there was a boy out fishing, and he fell and cut his leg. She brought him back to the town, because apparently she was down by the river for reasons. And she got his blood on him, and then her eyes went black, and she turned all the fishermen into machete-wielding zombies. And the second time, blood gets... Oh, when he gets his arm chopped off, blood gets splatted on her. And then everyone in the brothel turns into, like, gun-toting henchmen and people with claw hands. And then, for some reason, the prostitutes keep on their shiny short pants and tube tops.
Well, it's probably all the clothes that they had there. I mean,
well, no, the guys' clothes change into more hellish stuff. But
oh, that's
like,
what you're saying.
You gotta have sexy demons, and so someone has to splat blood on her to get her to work.
Because probably as a demon, she probably doesn't even have blood, I guess.
You're gonna have to carry someone around who's alive and kill them and splat the blood on her to get it to work. So are they planning on, like, a city-to-city tour?
There's probably easier ways to get blood. Like, you could probably just go to a hospital or something, or the Red Cross. And, I mean, you know, you have, like, demon powers, you just, like, knock over whoever's there and grab the blood and spill it all over yourself. Like, what are you doing? And then all of a sudden, like, everybody else turns into a zombie or whatever.
But it's only people in her immediate area.
Huh.
So she's going to have to go, like, block to block to every city in the world, getting splashed with blood and turning people in her immediate area into a demon. And then I guess they have to just move on to the next location.
It's just like draining bodies and like filling up like Mr. bottles and then like spraying her in the face every couple minutes.
I mean, that's a kind of hell for her, just having people's blood sprayed on her face so she can convert
that's pretty gross.
45 people into demons. I mean, think about how many people are in New York. This is going to take decades to do. And people aren't going to hang out after like a city block gets turned into demons. They're going to flee, so you have to chase them down to turn them into demons. The King of Hell wasn't like, there's some all-powerful switch I can flip to make this happen. And then she sort of commits suicide, and he's like, I'm so mad that you made her kill herself. And Hannah's like, what are you going to do? And shoots him in the head. And he falls back into hell.
He's like, oh no, I'm right back where I started, where all my stuff is. All my inflatable lawn crap is here.
I landed on my Rudolph. It was my favorite. So, Fear Effect. I don't think we have to decide if anyone's the good guy or bad guy, because everyone seems to be the bad guy in this game.
Yeah, I would say if one of the characters is King of Hell, that person's definitely the bad guy.
Yes, that's a de facto. You're not just ambiguous in your mission. You're the baddest of bad. So, I like it. I mean, we poked a little fun at it, but that's fine. If you can get over the tank controls and some horrendously hard boss fights due to tank controls, it's a cool little adventure, even though we've told you everything that happens in it are bad. So any closing thoughts on Fear Effect?
Yeah, what would you do to make it better? Probably, I mean, I guess you'd say fix the controls, but the problem is that those controls are kind of necessary, I think, for a game that uses the camera style of like the fixed angles. It's hard to use a different control scheme with that.
I would actually like to see someone Resident Evil 4 this franchise. Like, turn it into full 3D.
Yeah, so like if you were going to make a new one, you'd want to update that to, a modern control and camera style.
We should point out there is a new one. It's on Steam now. It's more of a Shadowrun kind of view. And I don't know the events of Fear Effect 2 or how this leads into a modern Fear Effect. Like, I don't know where the story escalates from We Stopped Hell.
I'd like to think that the sequel is like something really mundane, like the first one, we stopped hell from taking over Earth, and like the next one's like, we had an issue with our cable bill, but we got it straightened out.
Our car got scratched while in the car wash, and we had to talk to the manager.
Like something that would be really difficult in everyday life for you or I, but since they've had the experience of like fending off an invasion of hell, it's just like really easy for them. It's like, I changed my insurance coverage.
I didn't get audited by the government.
I updated my resume.
I made lasagna.
Oh, man.
That's next level stuff.
I don't think I could beat Fear. I couldn't get very far in Fear Effect 1. And if Fear Effect 2 is make a lasagna, I'm not getting anywhere in that either.
No, unless it's like in a can and you just warm it up. Like Chef Boyardee lasagna bites in weird sauce.
Those used to be called roller coasters when I was a little kid. It was like Chef Boyardee roller coasters, and then they decided to just name it lasagna. I think because like kids were kind of let down when they just opened it up and it was wavy noodles.
I can't ride this, it sucks. Pour the can out on the floor and just sliding around on it.
Just see like this disappointed like 10-year-old just like holding the Chef Boyardee can and just slowly dumping it right into the middle of the floor uncooked. It's like, I wanted a roller coaster.
The chef lied to me, man. It's where my life turned. Yeah, just Resident Evil for it. Because it has a good atmosphere. Like, I don't know if you can do the hell thing again, but I'd like to see more of the Blade Runner style of Hong Kong with the flying jets. And, putting flowers in vases. That'll be cool in 3D. If you want to find us, let's make this super easy. You can come to cartridgebaseradio.com.
So much for making it super easy.
Oh, yeah. That was horrible.
You almost called it Cartridge Racist Radio.
We are not that. We have all the buttons to click to find us on iTunes, Google Play. If you want to follow us on Twitter, that is Cart-Based Radio. If you want to follow us on Facebook, that is Cartridge-Based Radio. All right, so I'm Donald.
I'm Brad.
And we're Cartridge-Based Radio. And we will see you next week.
For those those of you at home who can't see this, like Donald has notes like a crazy person in a movie, you know, like about someone's falling insanity. It's just scribbles all over all these sheets of paper, and it all just says all work and no play makes Donald a dull boy.
That's not what it says.